Thanks for tuning in for those that made it. I'm way out in the bush and I'm down this old road in the middle of nowhere. But for whatever reason, there's cell service here, which is weird. If I end up on Unsolved Mysteries or something, you show them this video because maybe there'll be clues in this video. Something happens to me. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Serpents Part 3. In the first video, we talked about, of course, some stories of when the serpents helped the people, how that boy was saved during his fast. In the second video, we talked about how people got turned into serpents. In this third video, we're going to talk about a ghostly thing that happened in my village. This really happened, what I'm going to tell you. And it happened about 120 years ago is when it happened. It was somewhere here in the early 1900s. They say that the people were happy and they lived at this village. The village was the same village that I talked about before. And the village was called Bomgiizhik. That was the name of the village. Of course, there's pictographs there of serpents. You know, it's a historical village, the old village, they call it. And that's where they lived. And so this story is about what happened there and why my people relocated from that site to the site where we're now. Early one morning, of course, people were getting up. People were going to get ready to do their chores. And somebody noticed something. When they're outside to go get water, they would put their bucket in the lake. They started to carry it back to their little cabin. And they noticed something very peculiar. Something very strange. They noticed that there was a rock, a big rock, almost bigger than my hand. It was on top of the house. People noticed that. She said, why is that rock on top of my house? Those kids are probably playing around. The next day, she went to go get her water. When she was walking back to the house, she noticed that there was another big stone up there. So she told her husband, go up there and get those stones off. Those kids are playing with stones. So what they did was she grabbed a pair of pantses and she filled them with grass. And she made it look real scary and she put it by the house, thinking that it was going to scare those kids. The next day, she went up to that to go get water. She came back and she noticed those stones were on the house, but they were bigger. Those pantses, those scary pantses never scared whatever it was away. So she told her husband, honey, what the hell is going on? Why are there stones on top of the house? I don't know. He's like, beats me. So he went back up that house. He got them off. And they were big. They were as big as pumpkins. The next day, she went out to get water again. She came back. And she noticed that on top of the house, there were small boulders. They were even bigger than pumpkins. They were big. And she got scared. She told her husband, something's wrong. How did those stones get up there? They're too big. So she went around the village. She started talking to people. Something's going on here. How come there's big stones on my house? They started to say the same thing. Well, we found stones in our house too. We're finding them in our backyard. We're finding them in our gardens. We're finding these big stones everywhere. We don't know why they're there. The next day, that poor woman, she was digging around in her house. And she noticed something very peculiar. She noticed that there was a little piece of coal, red coal. She could smell it. She smelled something burning. There was little coals in the house. So she just put them out. She was wondering, why are these coals here? What the hell is going on? Later that afternoon, that house was just full of smoke. Little coals started to appear all over the place, and it stunk. All of a sudden, this smell came over the village, and it stunk. So, of course, they knew something was wrong. Why were those coals, those hot coals, being found in mysterious places in the house? She didn't know. So she told her husband, I don't know what's going on here, but something very, very scary is happening. So they talked to the elders, and the elders said, something is up. Something is very wrong. We have to move the village. It's being haunted. The whole village is talking. Mysterious things are happening. One person's door, they woke up and the whole door was gone. They never found the door. They were finding windows that were taken out and they were hanging in the trees. Lots of things were happening. People's houses were being started on fire mysteriously. So the elders, they decided it's not right to stay here anymore. Something was disturbed. Something's wrong. But what they didn't know was that previously there was a young boy that was put out to fast. And he was put out to fast at Genebekniashing, Snake Point. First day he was out to fast, his dad told him, you stay out here. You stay out here till you get your vision. All they gave him was a little blanket. That's it. Back in those days, you were tough. That's all you got was a blanket. You didn't get tents and foamies and, all sorts of sleeping bags and your pillows and all that stuff. Back in those days, when you fasted because you were tough. You're an Indian. But anyway, they gave that boy a little blanket. His dad told him, you stay out here till you get your vision. 3 days passed. The dad came and seen him. Did you get your vision? No, I never got it. Oh, well, you have to stay out here a little longer. Gave him a little bit of water, gave him a little bit of food on the third day. 5 days, the dad came back. How are you doing? Did you get your vision? No, I never got it. I never got my vision. Well, you have to stay out here a little bit longer. The dad went back 7 days. When he went back, the boy was gone. They never found that boy. They looked for him. He was gone. His blanket was hanging up in the tree. They don't know what happened to him at that point. So while this was happening in the village, the dad came down and caught them in that meeting and told them, my son is missing. We put him out to fast, but he's gone. So, of course, the whole village was in panic. They tried to find that boy. They couldn't. At the same time, everything was being haunted. So it was decided to call in some people that might be able to find that boy. And I believe they called in a man by the name of Gwegum. And Gwegum was very spiritual and said, I know what happened to that boy. That boy is gone. He's living in the water now. I seen him. And so, of course, the whole village was packing up. And as they were leaving that site to go find a new place to live, some people on the hill looked down and they seen that boy on the back of that serpent. And he went up like this, and he went down and he disappeared into the water. That boy is with that serpent. And so they knew that the boy was out there too long, that something wasn't right. And so they had to relocate the whole village. And of course, they moved the village to where it is now. But the old village, it's still haunted. It's still haunted, and I'll tell you why it's still haunted. Because I got haunted there. So anyway, one time I was going to go moose hunting, and I thought I'll go back there. It's a long walk. It's a long hike back there. But, I was young and I was full of piss and vinegar. So I decided to go back there. And I'm on this rock near that old village, and all I heard was, "Hey!" And I looked, and there was a man there. And so I thought, that's pretty cool. There's somebody out here. So they kind of went their way, and I went my way, and it was kind of neat. So I go back to my tent. I had a little prospector's tent, and I had it set up at this muskeg. And so I sat there early in the morning. I'm staring at this muskeg, just being very patient, not even making a noise or nothing. Just looking for the slightest movement in that muskeg. All of a sudden, I can smell something weird. And I turned around, and the little cook stove that I had in there, it was completely turned the other way. When you walk into a little tent, your stove is facing you usually, or it's facing, where a person can get at it. But the stove was completely turned around, and the door was facing the canvas, and my rubber boots were on there, and they were just melting, and it just stunk. Those were my boots. That's what I walked in there with. And they were melted. So I realized very quickly that I was being haunted. So I put my tobacco down. I quickly grabbed that stove, I threw it out, and I got out of there. I tied my shirt. I had a shirt on, I ripped it in half, and I tied it on my feet, and I walked out of there because I knew I was being haunted. I'll never forget that. And that old man, Kajajuan, he's the one that said, there's people that live back there still. It's haunted. There's lots of spirits back there because of what happened to that boy. And so that's what happened. So my village got relocated because of serpents, because of hauntings that took place. That area there is very rich because the serpents live in tunnels there. It's fascinating how those tunnel systems work. At the mouth of the river, they call that Zodwat. There's a hole there. It goes down and it comes up at a place they call Mendigweasin. That tunnel goes down again. It comes up at another place where the village is, Genebgukshibigajwat. Then it goes down again. It comes up at Genebekniashing. Then that tunnel goes down one more time. And it comes up at Monado Minasing. Then it goes down again. It comes up at Asini Swasening. And the tunnel just keeps going. It keeps coming up. Wherever that tunnel comes up, our people would go there and fast there. And that's where you'll find pictographs, because they're communicating with those spirits, those serpents. And they say a long time ago, this is another story. They say a long time ago, this woman was there. She was a young mom, and she had her baby in a tikanogan, in a cradle board. And she had that baby hanging in a tree. Back in those days, you had to work all the time. So she was busy. She was making her fish. She was doing all sorts of stuff. And her baby would just sit there and watch her work. The tikanogan is a very special thing. When you're tied into that tikanogan, you learn patience, you learn discipline, you learn how to watch, but you're also tied. You're in Mother Earth, they say. You're tied to that tree of life. Those charms they hang on that tikanogan tick, are very sacred, and they teach the child things when you hang things on there. But anyway, that's what that baby was doing, watching Mummy work. But she went into wigwam to get something. When she came out, the baby was gone. And there was mysterious footprints that led to the water. She screamed, "My baby, my baby." She started to go around to the other people. "Something took my baby. Did you see my baby? There's tracks going into the water." Nobody could find that baby. Finally, the whole village was trying to look for that baby. That poor baby, something took it into the water. She said there's footprints there. So of course people panicked. And again they called in medicine people to try to understand what happened. And there was two brothers, and they had a shaking tent ceremony, and I believe it was Babamash was his name. I can't be certain, but those two brothers keep coming up in stories, and one of them was Babamash. But anyway, they had a ceremony at Jiskan, a shaking tent, to try to find out what happened. What happened is that the ground opened up inside, and a snake stuck its head out and told that medicine man, people are not making their offerings. People are not doing that. So something in the water took that baby. So of course the medicine people tried to negotiate, and they tried to give payments to that being, that snake that was in there. And the snake said, "Yes, I can give the baby back. But you have to remember, you have to always make your water offerings." They said the baby is in the side of that hill. You have to dig it out. You have to dig it out. That's what they told them. So the medicine people told the people, go to that mountain on the side there. That baby's underneath those rocks. You got to dig it out. So they did. They went there, and they dug all day. I don't know how many days they dug. They tried to dig. Finally, when they dug, they got into like a cavern, and sure enough, that baby was there. That baby was in mint condition. Nothing was wrong with that baby. That baby was well taken care of. So that medicine man, he grabbed that baby, and he prayed with that baby, and he brought it back to the mom. And he said, this baby is a very special baby. And of course, that baby grew to be very old. After he gave it to the mom, that medicine man jumped and dived into the lake. And he swam down where that tunnel is, and they never seen him again. And that's a true story. That really happened. He traded his own life for that baby. And that's another story that I heard. As Anishinaabeg people, as Indigenous people, there's a great law that exists in this land. And just like I was explaining in the other video, generosity, offerings, respect, dignity, the land insists upon that. When we fall away from it, when we decide not to give back or to give to the great powers that are here, then our people will suffer for it. There's no question. As Indigenous people, we weave in and out of the territories of serpents and thunderbirds and little people and mermaids and animals. Our life here is not just about us. There's a lot of spirits on this land. When we live our lives on the water, in the forest, sometimes it's easy to forget that they're there. When our kids go to school all day, all damn day in a classroom, that does something to their mind. How are they going to know anything? How are they going to be really, truly educated? Our land offers the highest form of education, and our language. It offers the highest form of education that we can give our kids. How are they going to know how to make offerings? How are they going to know that land like the back of their hand if they're not out there? And so I believe that, it's time that we just slow down a little bit, and bloody take a step back and say, holy crap, we're going this way too fast. We're missing something, and we're forgetting something. Because our offerings and how we interact with everything on the land is critical right now. Because we all know the world is going through an ecological collapse. Like, this is serious stuff. Climate change is real. We need to have elders in 60 years that are absolutely, engulfed in traditional knowledge and understand that, and were raised that way. Just think, in 60 years, do we want elders that speak Anishinaabemowin or speak the native language? Do we want them that know about these things, about ceremonies? Do we want them to know this land like inside and out? In that time, we're going to be in a climate serious mess. And we're going to need elders that never seen the inside of a classroom, that only knew that bush. Every once in a while, there'll be a young child that is very gifted, and very spiritual. They're medicine people, they're shaking tent people, they have special gifts. Why would you ever take them to the school? Take them to the bush, so that in 60 years they could say, I was raised on the land. I was raised by my father, my mother in the bush. That's, I think, is important. And it's when we live on the land and when we reconnect, that's when we're able to keep that relationship strong that we have. When we're not on the land, we're not making our offerings. We're not being those good-hearted, generous people that we're supposed to be. Those are only my thoughts. Damn Indian Act needs to get a kick in the ass and get out. So that's my message for tonight. Offerings again. There's the land insists upon generosity. Let's get our kids out in the bush a little bit more, and we'll kick the Indian Act in the ass. I think that's really important too. So I have to get going. It's late. I still have some more traveling to do. I really enjoy this. I think it's really good. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about how the serpents helped the people in my tribe during times of war, and how they helped my people survive during times of war. That'll be tomorrow night. That'll be part 4 of Serpent Stories. So thank you for watching. It's always a pleasure. It's an honor. If nobody ever sees me again, you make sure you get this video to Unsolved Mysteries. Nahaw, miigwech. Bamapi, guabmin. Nahaw. See you.